Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's a beautiful night here in Wake Forest, North Carolina. I am Suzanne from Page 158 Books, and we have a buy button on the bottom. It's green. If you want to buy Hank Phillippi Ryan's or Rea's books, just, click on that button. You can get them on the New York Times bestseller list by buying from an independent bookstore. And a couple months ago, we had Hank Phillippi Ryan on with The First to Lie, which was a fantastic book. And now we have Rea, and we're gonna have a little chit chat session. I have my moonshine and pineapple. So we're excited. We're so excited to have you here. I just want to remind everybody in the bottom right-hand section, there's a little white bar. Put some comments and questions there. At the end of the night, we're just going to start asking questions. I want to introduce Hank Phillippi Ryan, who was the big newscaster when we were in Boston, and I'm thrilled to have her here. She is the best-selling author of 12 mystery novels. Hank has also won multiple prestigious awards for her crime fiction, 5 Agathas, 3 Anthonys, the Daphne, 2 McCavities, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. Boom!
Come on, Rea.
She is also the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV. She's won 37 Emmys, 14 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and dozens of other honors for her groundbreaking journalism. Her newest book is The First to Lie, a chilling psychological standalone. The Publishers Weekly starred review says, stellar, or as we say in Boston, Stella. Hank Phillippi Ryan could win a 6th Agatha with this one, and we agree. Rea, welcome. Rea.
It's okay. It's a running joke.
Every time I try to correct myself, I'm just going to say it wrong. So Rea Frey.
Right?
Frey.
You took this step. You're doing this on purpose. They're going to do this all night. They're going to
I have one thing to do, and I can't do it right.
No, you're good. You're good. It happens every day, literally.
Rea
Frey.
See?
Is a multi-published, award-winning best-selling author of 3 suspense novels and 4 nonfiction books. She's been featured in Us Weekly, Entertainment Weekly, Pop Sugar, Working Mother, Bustle, She Knows, Marie Claire, Parade, Shape, Brit & Company, Hello Giggles, Crime Reads, Cafe Mom, Writer's Digest, and more. Wow. How old are you? 21?
38. 40.
You're a baby. She also recently founded and scaled her 6-figure business Writeway, where aspiring writers become published authors. Love to talk to you about that. Yeah. On her weekly Writeway podcast, she cuts through the BS of the publishing industry and gives writers the exact information they need to make informed decisions about their careers. When she's not busy running a business, meeting book deadlines, or homeschooling her daughter, which is easy.
Oh, so easy. Yeah.
That's so easy. You can find her alternating between meditating, exercising, and trying not to lose her mind in the process. Well, good luck with that.
Yes, thank you.
To learn more, where are they going to go?
To either reafry.com or writeway.com.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I butchered.
I apologize.
And I think I keep trying to correct it and not going. So you're up. You're going to ask some questions, and I will see you in about 30 minutes.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. This is so much. Rea, we were talking earlier about how one of the great things about COVID, if there's any good thing about it, it's that you and I met each other during COVID. We got to have gotten to know each other during COVID. And the camera on my computer just moved. So now I'm trying to make sure that it looks like I'm really looking.
We are connecting. We're good.
Okay, we're good. It's so funny when your name is Rea Frey, so people know that. But when you look at it on the cover of the book, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I remember when I met my husband's mom for the first time, she asked me what my name was. And I said, Hank Phillippi. And she said, no, that's not how you pronounce it. She corrected my own name. And I can understand that it would be a running joke. But so you were saying you did yoga and meditation to stay sane. How are you? How are you doing in this?
It's such a loaded question. I mean, we kind of talked about that actually. Like, we're both on book deadlines, and I'm really struggling to find the creative inspiration to just kind of power through like I normally do. And I've been really honest about that. I mean, I think every day is different, and I'm learning to just go along some days, and some days I'm like, nope, don't want to do anything. This is just too much. And I don't think we're alone in that. I feel like a lot of people feel the same way. How about you?
And I think there's a sort of veneer of terror over everything, and our attention spans are short. And we try to, I was thinking about this, whether, as I was trying to finish my new book, sort of successfully so far, knock on wood, you think about whether what we're doing as storytellers is valuable at a time when every day is life and death.
Yeah.
But I do think, well, what do you think about that? What we do as writing, as entertainment, as suspense?
I think it's necessary during this time. I mean, I know a lot of people with suspense, we're kind of in a tough genre because some people want a total escape from doom and gloom or darkness. But I think what we do is such a gift during this time. And I'm seeing with my clients and just with people in general, they're reading more than ever before. And I don't know. I think it's a great time to be a writer and a great time to tell stories. I think it's a real necessity. What about you?
Well, yes, more than ever I do. I mean, I have said it is always safe inside a book. Always. It is always safe inside a story. And I wonder if when you get into your writing mode, whether you feel safe at your desk or at your computer or wherever it is that you put yourself in your stories.
Yeah, that's a great question. I never really thought about like the term safe, feeling safe. I mean, I feel very safe in my environment. And actually during this year, my husband, daughter, and I decided very early on, we weren't going to fear what was going on. We were going to use it as a time to strengthen our immune system, to take up a breath and meditation practice, to eat better, to sleep, to not drink, to do all of these things. So we're about as quote unquote safe as you can be with what we can control. So the fact that my daughter's been home pretty much the entire year, as has my husband, carving that space and trying to, I'm just never alone. I share an office now. We started our company. My husband quit his job, so we share an office space now. So it's harder to carve out that little piece of, I don't know, just that piece in the house that's mine. So I'm still working on that. Sometimes I'm at the kitchen table, sometimes I'm downstairs, but we work really hard to make sure that our home and our environment does feel safe.
It's so wise that you counsel people to control what we can control, because that's all we have control over. Talk about your book. Hold up your book, because mine is on a shelf somewhere in my house. And one of my ideas for the pandemic was that I was going to take all of my books and put them in some order. And that has not happened. So I just put them in place.
I have mine, you can kind of, well, it doesn't really look like it, but I have mine actually kind of color coordinated. I'm a little OCD, but it's so much fun to do that with your books.
Definitely so. But how can you find anything? I'd love to know from the audience if they color coordinate book. But anyway, I do want to talk about your book, since that is the point of being here tonight. Hold it up just so the audience can see it and get this in their brain. Until I Find You, a novel of suspense about a woman who has lost her husband and has an infant and is gradually losing her sight. Yeah. It's so compelling. And so riveting and such a page turner. Where did that idea come from?
The original idea actually came from a reoccurring nightmare that I had, where I would wake up, this was night after night after night, and I would hear a baby crying. And in this dream, I would go into a nursery, I would scoop up a baby, I would look at the baby and realize that child, while it looked similar to mine, was not mine. And this thought just kept coming to me again and again and again, so much so that I brought it up to my editor. And as we were kind of spitballing ways that this could work or not work, I actually had another character I was thinking about writing who was vision impaired. And I realized I don't think I've ever read a book with a vision impaired protagonist, especially not in our genre. Mm-hmm. So I thought it would be so interesting to take this woman who's lost everything. Yes, she's lost her husband. She's recently lost her mother. She's moved back to her hometown, and she's the only vision impaired person in her community. And she's exhausted. She's grieving. She's become a little bit paranoid when the book starts. And I wanted to put her in this predicament where she thinks that her child has been swapped with another baby, and her whole community, everyone around her, even the police, they think that she's mistaken. So I want the reader to kind of decide is she mistaken, or does a mother always know who?
And there's so many things to unpack in this that are so gorgeous and so perfect for suspense. One is when you're talking about an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
And she is as reliable as she can be for her, which is in the face of it unreliable, because she literally cannot believe or know what she's seeing.
Yeah, completely.
How was that to write?
Challenging. I was like, oh yeah, this will be great. Like, I'll do research and sit down. But as writers, we use our sites to create worlds for our readers. So I very quickly panicked and was like, I don't know how to do this. Words that we even use or phrases all the time. I just had to completely rethink that. And I don't know though, it was challenging, but it was great to stretch as a writer and put myself in her shoes and create a world where she's not completely blind. I couldn't create, a character who'd been blind from birth. Otherwise there would have been no story really. But it was so humbling to kind of walk in her shoes.
Well, no, and that's what I think is so genius about this, because she wasn't blind from birth, so she knows what things are and how the world works.
Right.
But it's a whole book about loss, about the potential loss of her son and the loss of her husband and the loss of her mother, and then this impending loss of her sight, about how she might deal with that. So not only unreliable in her vision, but unreliable emotionally, and then that people know that.
Exactly.
And deal with her that way.
Exactly. And I don't know. I just putting myself in her shoes. Obviously my first book that I wrote is about a child who gets kidnapped, and this is a baby swap. And I think I'm kind of playing out my worst case scenarios. I love to write about things that just scare moms in general, but this would be, again, my worst case scenario, especially if the people around you just don't believe what you're saying, so much so that you start to doubt yourself. And so it's really a story about, to me, at the core, just knowing and trusting your gut, which I think is applicable to all of us all the time anyway. The circumstances of this book are just a little bit extreme.
Stephen King says to write about what you fear, not what you know, but what you fear. When you plumb the depths of that, it's really powerful. I remember a scene in the book where your main character goes out and looks at the lake and takes a picture of this beautiful lake that she knows that she won't see forever. It's just such a poignant emotional moment. The other thing you plumb in this book is the emotion of a mother and the connection with their child. The question, as you brought up, does a mother really know? Would you be able to say, this is not my child? How did you feel writing that, and how did you feel exploring that emotion?
It was heavy. I think every mother knows their child, and that's just not to be questioned. And when I started doing my research and talking to parents, and actually in the blind community, I feel like they almost know more so than we do, because they are in tune with every little, like Rebecca has this thing where she kind of takes inventory of his whole body. Like, she knows that he has eczema and what that feels like. And he has a little notch in his collarbone where he got stuck during birth. And so, I feel like you always know, but then again, to have the reader question it and wonder if she's just had postpartum psychosis, if she's had a total psychotic break, like what's going on. I love that questioning process that happens for a reader and even almost for the protagonist.
You didn't have to, in some of the cases of the book, though, you didn't have to guess what that felt like. You lived it. You researched what it would feel like to not be able to see. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I first started with the Tennessee School for the Blind, which is literally 5 minutes from my house. And they were so nice. I went in, I talked to the director. He showed me cool things like how to use their phone and what software they use. And I talked to moms who, like, little things like you pull the stroller instead of pushing it. And the bells that you put around their ankles so you can hear them, and just kind of inserting little things. And then I had a couple of beta readers who were vision impaired to kind of fact check. But then the town that I set this in Elmhurst, Illinois, is very walkable, and we have friends there. We used to live in Chicago, so we visited, and my husband blindfolded me, and we walked the city. And I just wanted to know, even though she's not completely blind, I wanted to feel what that feels like to suddenly have sight and then not. And I can't even imagine having a baby. No one let me take their baby around blindfolded, thankfully, but it was so vulnerable. And, I wrote her she kind of has a photographic memory. I'm like borderline photographic memory. So I thought that would be, helpful in her constructing everything in her mind, but it was intense. It was just,
when you did that, it's, Joe Finder, the writer Joe Finder, who did a book about being kidnapped, and he had himself put in a casket with the lid closed to see what I rest my case, to see what it would be like. And I think being blindfolded and walking the streets of a city would be absolutely terrifying. How did you feel about it? And what was differently, if I could ask you this, what was differently terrifying than what you thought it would be?
It's just like little things. Accidentally stepping off a curb. And you hear the people who are losing their sight, you hear these horror stories about if you are in a city, like stepping into a huge pothole in the ground. Of course, people have canes and all of that, but you can very easily miss things, or traffic, or crossing the street. Just little things like crossing the street. And where I live, it's not very accessible. It's not very walkable. It's definitely not vision impaired friendly. And so a lot of people use car share services. And there were a ton of horror stories about that too, with the vision impaired community, calling up an Uber, and they get in the car and it's not an Uber, and they get assaulted. It was just, for me personally, I only kind of did this grid and stayed somewhat safe in this suburban area, but it was I just was off balance and so unsure of like every little noise and where I was in space. And I've done that in my own home. Like, you know where things are in your home. You turn out the lights or take your side away. I'm bumping into everything.
You figure out how to do it too. You would put your hand on the bedside to see how to go, or put your finger in the glass to see how high the water rises.
Exactly.
Do you, after writing this book, do you look at the world in a different way?
Definitely. So I'm a totally visual person. I always have been. We just recently took these learning tests. My daughter had to, and she's auditory. Like, she is an auditory learner, and I'm very visual. So I've always been very taken with just what I see. And, you and I have discussed this, but I have terrible vision. I have vitreous detachments. I have like post 50-year-old eyes. And it's always been one of my fears to go blind. So I really try and soak in what I can. And for this character, I think the most maddening thing to write was, if you think your child's been kidnapped or swapped in normal circumstances, that helplessness is the thing. The not knowing, I think, is what just kills all of us. And that's my biggest fear. But to not be able to actively search for your child because you can't really do anything about it, I think that is like the worst. It's just the worst effect of being vision impaired in a situation like that.
I'm getting stressed even remembering reading the book. It's such a page turner of a book. Did you know the whole story before you began writing it? Did you know?
I wrote this story, and it was much more of, so I straddle the genres between women's fiction and kind of the domestic suspense genre. So my editor always likes me to have a little bit more heart and character development, which I love. But I had written the first draft of this, and it was like kind of crazy thriller, and Rebecca's a badass, and she's doing all of these things. And it was a totally different book. And my editor gave me my editorial letter back, and she was like, great, this like hits all the marks of a thriller. Now I want you to trash it, start over, you can do better. So I had to
wait. I mean, this just for people in the audience, and for me personally, this is the moment where you make your gorgeous story that you have done, as you said, that hits all the marks of a thriller.
Right.
Your editor, who you rely on and trust, says, yes, Rea, this is great. Now toss it. I mean, how did that not pull the emotional rug out from under you?
I'm lucky in that, and I teach this to my clients all the time, I remove emotion from the process. Once I turn that book in, I really don't think it's mine anymore. It's going to be for the reader, I don't have any say-so in it. But hearing that you have to start completely over, I mean, I love a challenge and I love pushing myself, and she's always really great at that. But it was kind of the 11th hour. I was drained. I had, since 2018, I'm on book 4, and it's just been as you know, I mean, it's just crazy. It's a crazy fast pace. You don't even have time to sit with a book.
And that is one of the things that I think that we do miss is that you talk about meditation in your life. There should be a meditative state of writing a book where you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that the muse always comes when you're working. Oh. And I think that's really a valuable thought. But rewinding just a tiny bit. So, and forgive me for putting the question this way, but what did your editor see in your book that you didn't see, that you hadn't seen?
She, it was really more about Rebecca and really connecting with her more on an emotional level. I think I kind of, in the first draft, it was like things were just, again, happening around her, and she had no real sense of control of the situation. Not that she does in the book, but I feel like readers trust her now in this version. I mean, they might question a little bit, but they're going to go along with her and they're going to believe her. And I just had typical villain and just all of this stuff going on. And I think she just wanted me to push deeper and try to connect on a more emotional level and put myself in her shoes. And for some reason, I just didn't in that. I wanted it to be more like action and twists and all of that. So I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad I had to redo it. And, I never read my books or anything after they're done. Sometimes I'll listen to the audiobook because I love the woman, Samantha Des. She's done all 3 of my books. Actually, she's just phenomenal, but I really do release it into the world, and, good reviews, bad reviews, whatever happens, I'm very quickly to move on to the next project.
Tell about the audiobook, the first moment when you heard Samantha read your book. What was that like when it filled your head with your story?
That was the coolest thing. So back in 2018 when I launched, she did Not Her Daughter. And I remember I was on a road trip. I was doing events. I was doing like 50 events, and it was 10 hours. And I had a really long road trip, and I was like, I'll just listen to this because I'm not going to read it. And it was such an out-of-body experience. I mean, I really removed myself from the story and forgot that I wrote it and really enjoyed. I mean, I enjoyed that experience. I thought it was so cool. What about you? When that first?
Well, it's such an interesting question. I'm thinking about that. 2 things. Yeah. One is The First to Lie, the audiobook of The First to Lie is read by Cassandra Campbell, who does Where the Crawdads Sing. So here's this writer. And I was in the Chicago airport, remember airports? And my editor sent me a file, and she said, this is your book. This is the audiobook. And I put in the little earbuds, and I was, with a million people around me, and O'Hare, O'Hare is crazy. And there was this hiss of the audio, as it begins, and then the story started, and I almost burst into tears. This is my world. This is not it wasn't so much the words as the world was just cool.
And I just love, again, I guess I'm visual, but I'm a big podcast person. I do like audiobooks, and it transports you somewhere entirely.
It does. But the other thing about audiobooks, and I wonder if you feel this way too, is that knowing that people, and I'd love to know if the people in the audience listen to audiobooks or not, or care about that. But one of the things I learned from audiobooks is that you have to ground the reader in the scene instantly, because in an audiobook, you can't go back. So I'm very careful now as I write my books to make sure that at the beginning of each chapter, which is where you might start, that the reader knows who's talking and where they are and what's going on. Because in my book, right, that makes a huge
that is such a great tip. I am keeping that.
So talk about, I'm wondering if we have fully enough told your readers here what your book is. I mean, just tell us sort of the bottom line of what this book is about.
Yeah, I mean, again, I always kind of say, and you said it early on, but it is about this blind widow, Rebecca Gray, who, is a really tough place in her life. She's lost her husband a year ago. She just lost her mother. She's living in her childhood home in Elmhurst, Illinois, which is kind of a strange experience. And she is in mourning and is really only living for this child of hers. She was also a very well-known musician, and her career has kind of faded with her eyesight as well. Now she gives cello lessons to kids in the neighborhood, but she's, at the beginning of the book, she's thinking that she's being followed. She's kind of hearing things. She's hearing footsteps on the baby monitor and thinks that doors are unlocked when they should be locked and things are in the wrong places. So she's either just exhausted, as we've all been in new motherhood, or something else is going on. So she feels like something bad's going to happen to her. Her friends keep saying, God, you're just tired. You try to do it all. You need to get a nanny or get some help. And one day she's at the park with her friends. She parks her baby stroller behind a bench. She gets up, faints. And when she wakes up, a friend takes her home, puts her to bed, takes care of the baby and is like, you need to rest. When Rebecca wakes up, she hears her baby crying and goes very slowly up to the nursery, opens the door, reaches in, picks up this child, and instantly knows from his cry alone, but also the way he feels, that it's not her baby. And the entire book is her, trying to get help from the police, from her ex-boyfriend, who's a detective, who kind of comes back into play, from her friends, to find out what happened to her baby.
I dare any of you in the audience to resist that story. And what a brilliant story idea it is. So, and we're talking that it's not only about loss, but about betrayal. Did you know those themes when you started?
I did. I mean, the whole kind of, we can't talk about all the spoilers, but there was a thread of betrayal that I definitely knew I wanted to touch upon, and it kind of morphed over time, but the central theme of it was there. I write a lot about betrayal in my books, and it's funny, I've kind of been like looking at the themes of my books, and I get asked all the time if I had a horrible childhood or and I did not, but it's just really interesting to deal with these themes in our books that people deal with all the time, maybe just in a slightly more dramatic fashion.
I mean, all of my books are about trust and justice. All of them are
better than kidnapping.
I guess as a reporter,
yeah,
I've been a reporter for 43 years, and I guess that's what I have searched for in my reporting life.
Yeah.
I read a wonderful interview with David McCullough, the historian, who was asked, do you have themes for all your books? And he said, yes, I do. And I write my books to find out what the themes are.
Oh, I love that.
Because it does show how our writer mind works. How does your writer mind work? There's a question.
That's a great question. I do think that I am, so I didn't touch fiction for 10 years. I went to school for creative writing. I wrote a crappy novel that came out when I was 22. Terrible experience. I was like, I'm abandoning this. Went to journalism, wrote a lot of nonfiction, wrote for magazines, newspapers, wrote health and wellness books, and kind of took the long way around. It actually wasn't until I became a mother that I started examining these themes and I was really observing particularly mother-daughter relationships, because I have a daughter, and wanting to just understand sometimes how mothers and daughters in particular really battle. And that's kind of where it started. And then it kind of morphed. I mean, we've talked about this before, but I worked a couple of death row cases, and one in particular about a mother who was accused of drowning her 3 children. And I attended the trial. I was the spokesperson for the family, and that has always stuck with me. Like, mothers who are driven to the point of doing something horrific to their children. And I don't know, that theme has always kind of been there, and just worst case scenarios. So I like examining why people do things, really. And I'm always, in just my everyday life, I like to push beyond the status quo. I like to dig deep, and I do like to answer that question, like why we behave the way that we do. So my brain is always, my writer mind is just why all the time. Like,
and I so agree with you. I mean, I think we are always asking questions. We're always asking, what about this? What if this happens? Why do I care?
Yep. Why do I care?
Important. And why would this person do something? And I think that stems from a hope of somehow understanding our existence, why we're here, and what we do, and what pushes each other, how we push each other, and what pushes ourselves to do what we do. And that is going sort of full circle back to the beginning of what we were talking about. Now, how you have so successfully understood that you can control what you can control.
Yeah.
And you can't otherwise. And you teach that to writers too. One of the things I admire about you so much is not only that you're doing this for you, but you have this wonderful organization that helps other people who want to get into the business. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what you touched upon is so important, though. Like, as writers, I think it's so easy to focus on the results or the outcome or the accolades or hitting the bestseller list. And when writers come to me who want to write a book, because 81% of people want to write a book, but so few of us actually do. But when they come to me, I always start with why. Why do you want to write a book? What are your publication goals? And when we really start distilling it down, the people who are like, I want to be a best-selling author, sometimes that's not actually the case. But I've seen so many of my clients come to me who want to be published, zero idea about how it all works, about how to get an agent, what a publishing contract even means or looks like, how you get paid. Money is such a huge part of this, and I'm very passionate about talking to writers. I have a weekly podcast where we really tell it like it is, and go into all of the stuff that in our industry is often kind of hush hush. I mean, I think sometimes as authors, we can feel a little bit in the dark or a little bit uncertain about what's going on and what am I really doing. So I'm very passionate about helping both fiction and nonfiction writers. We're really a one-stop shop for all publication needs, whether you need editing help, you need co-collaboration on your book proposal, you need help pitching to agents, you need design, website work. So we really kind of cover it all. And it's so joyful when somebody comes to us with an idea and they leave with a book deal. It's like, I mean, I've said it before, but I get more excited about their successes than my own, because it's just watching people's dreams come true and having them believe in themselves enough to do it, and just kind of needing a little bit of guidance and a roadmap to get there. It's awesome.
It sounds like it sounds like you have created a life that is so full. That you wanted to write when you were much younger,
Mm-hmm.
and you tried it and tried it and tried it, and it kind of wasn't the time.
Yeah.
And I'm such a firm believer in that things happen when it's the time for them to happen.
Absolutely.
Have you felt that that's happened in your writing life as well?
Yes. I mean, I think, when I was in my 20s, I was just desperate, like, just want to be published. And I would query and pitch and didn't know what I was doing. I ended up learning more about the business. I interned at a literary agency. I kind of studied, but I never had the right story to tell. I could crank out nonfiction all day long, but I didn't understand about the author platform and how important that was. And then when I returned to fiction, I decided I was going to treat it like a business and really learn everything I could. And I really realized once I got that book deal, I don't think I was ready before. I thought I was, but
that's the power of youth, isn't it? The confidence of youth, that we have no idea, that we don't have any idea what we're doing.
No idea.
So much fun to think about that. And now we're running out of time, but I want to ask you, how do you want, when someone closes your book, and hold it up one more time so we can see that gorgeous cover.
Wow.
When someone closes Until I Find You, how do you want them to, how do you think about them feeling? Not want them to feel, but how do you think about them feeling?
I mean, with any of my books, I want this, I mean, this is a cliche answer, but I want the story and the characters to stay with them. I want them to feel like they just spent time in someone's world and to still wonder, really. I want them to wonder about that character and what happens after. And that wonder is not really a feeling necessarily, but I want the story to kind of resonate and stick with them.
I mean, it's such a perfect time to read this book because, as we said at the beginning, it's always safe inside a story. And getting to be in your book allows a person to live someone else's life, to make someone else's decisions, to work on someone else's problems, and to fight someone else's battles. And instead of our own, it takes us out of our own life a little bit, which is such a joy these days. And I saw that Claire, was saying in the comments that storytelling is so much more important these days than ever. So we're so grateful that you are telling such a marvelous story.
Right.
Let me ask whether people have any questions of you. Any questions or
yes, any questions?
Anything that you'd like to ask?
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So you were talking about audiobooks, and I'm like, I listen to classics on audio while I'm doing deliveries because I can't pronounce the names.
Come on.
No, I'm serious. I trip over them. Like one of the reasons I didn't like Harry Potter is I couldn't pronounce Hermione.
It doesn't matter.
But so the two of you are fascinating together. You really have energy like coming off of each other. I want the two of you to write a book because you have different motivations. Like your fears, Hank, are so different, and your motivations, I think, when writing the book are so different that the two of you combine one chapter would be.
Have you ever thought about that, Hank? You know, like Sarah Pekkanen and
I would love to do that. If there's ever a duo that could do it,
I've always wanted to do that. I think that would
I think it would be great.
Oh my God.
And you can call it, I think we should name
I'll
it
be your agent. No.
Do it. No, I love that idea. I mean, I've always thought about that collaboration. I'm so interested in that synergy between two writers.
Yeah. And it's interesting how different people do it. You know, Charles Todd, who writes with his mother, Caroline. And I was interviewing them once, and they're wonderful books. Inspector Rutledge. I know you have them, Sue. I bet you do.
Yes, we love it. Yeah.
And the best books, World War I era. Here's how they do it. It's crazy. They each write a chapter. They'll each write chapter one, and then they see which chapter one they like better, or they mix them. And I said, you write the book twice?
That's amazing, though. Like it
does not seem like the most logical.
Yeah, right.
And Caroline looked at me like, "Oh, I guess we do. I never thought about it that way." But that seemed like the way to do it. And other collaborators do it completely differently.
Yeah.
So we tend to find out.
Oh my God, I love that. And I recently read a book called The Night Swim by Megan Golden. So it's just a single character, but she was so amazing in the way she did it, where it was from two different characters' perspectives, but then she has this true crime podcast that she's doing. So a chapter is actually the podcast. And when you listen to the audiobook, they do the music and it's like the actual podcast. So I think there's so many different ways you could do it, but I'm down.
If you think about it, when you're rewriting, you have to do all those edits. You know, when the editor goes through it, you have to rewrite it anyway. So why not just do it with somebody else and have them correct it, and then you correct it again? And
the thing is that it wouldn't. I mean, as a reporter, I've worked with editors and executive producers and all kinds of people who are looking at my scripts at every moment of every day, and people are changing and tweaking. And I love editing. I love the process of having somebody make my product be better. Yep. But when I'm writing my novels, I kind of like to do it by myself.
Yeah, you're very private, right? You don't like to show it to anyone, which I admire so much. Yeah.
Well, do you show yours to other people, Rea?
No, I mean, not early. I mean, I'm really choosy about, I'm going to send it to 15 beta readers. And I'm a little bit more private as well. I like to talk about it. Actually, I talk to it talk about it with my 8-year-old daughter. I'm totally messing her up because we talk about all the crazy plot lines, and she always changes my books to have robots in them and everything. But I do talk about them. I don't show my work as much either.
Well, that's kind of like talking it out too, to get flow. Yeah. So
process. That's when I get the best work done, is when I'm actually away from the computer and I'm thinking, processing, troubleshooting, away from the page.
Wow. No questions.
Come on, questions.
I talked to my husband about my husband is a criminal defense attorney. And so my books have some legal elements in them. So every day back before COVID, when I would be sitting here at my desk and Jonathan would be at his office, every day about 3 o'clock, I realized that I had a question, and I would call him and say, "Sweetheart, it's me, with the question of the day." And so I used him to get factually, theoretically, what a judge would say, or what the law would be, or what someone would do, or what a detective would wear. Kind of like you did, Rea, though, in your research.
I did. I'm not married to, that would have been really helpful. But I did there was a cop who kind of walked me through, this is how she would be treated. This is how she would be in the system. It's kind of unfortunate the way that a lot of the vision impaired community is handled when it comes to crimes, but it was fascinating.
What do we not know about that? How would you describe how they're treated?
Not well. Think about it. If there's a crime and you can't describe what happened or what's going on, a lot of times they get thrown out, and there's just not much that they can do.
Classic Carrie Mason move. Were you wearing your glasses at the time? No. Goodbye.
So it's pretty terrifying, actually.
They call it eyewitness. That's the whole point of it. Is
exactly. But that's so nice you have that in your husband, because getting that information right is so critical, and
people know. But that's what I was going to say is, people know whether you get the legal stuff right, but vision impaired people will also know whether you got the vision impaired stuff right.
Totally.
You heard from people about that.
Yeah, I was terrified because I was, in my second book I wrote about a boy with autism, and I was really worried about that. And then I'm taking on, the vision impaired community. It has been so positive. They've been so lovely about it. And again, I had a couple of vision impaired beta readers just to kind of fact check certain things. We can't ever get it completely right as writers. It's just not going to happen. But that's why we write fiction. But it's been really positive. So it's been lovely.
And also there's right, and then there's right for your character. If Rebecca thinks or feels a certain way. I got an email once from a reader. I had put in a book that a lawyer came back to his desk and sort of looked at the turkey sandwich that he had on his desk, and who had left it there for 4 hours. And he was worried. He said he was worried about the mayonnaise going bad on the sandwich. Mm-hmm. And I got an email from a person who said something like, "I love your book, but it would be the turkey that goes bad, not the mayonnaise."
I got a similar one about the most random detail that I said something about having grits in Iowa. One of my characters ate grits at a diner. It's no, that wouldn't happen. There are no grits. And I was like, wait, what? That's what you picked up on? Not all the other things that you could have chosen. I love reader feedback. Yes. It's literally the best.
It is the best. It is the best. The funniest and the sweetest. And the moments that someone says, "You really got this," and thank you.
There's our book. We could have the craziest reviews, the one-liners, and aggregate that from all of the writers that we know, because we've all had those just crazy.
Every writer would buy that book.
Oh my gosh!
And no readers would believe that
they would not. But that's an idea too.
Yeah,
we're just word shopping.
I would love all that.
Yeah.
Well, my nightstand is high, so I can't wait to go to bed with this book tonight.
Thank you.
So thank you, Rea.
Thank you. Right. Yes, you got it.
So Claire Paxton is she's in 400 book clubs that we have, and she is. Rea, if you were not a writer, what would you be?
Ooh, I probably would have been, well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an Olympic gymnast. That was my goal, but I would probably be a lawyer. I always, my parents were like, good Lord, you do not take no for an answer. You do research, you're stubborn and driven. So I think I would have enjoyed being a lawyer. But the world really, do we need another lawyer? I mean, probably not.
My son was the same way, just could talk and argue his way out of everything, and he's in law school, so I can see
there you go. I mean, it could have been a really interesting path.
Yeah.
That's what I would be too. I would be a lawyer.
I remember us talking about that, or detective. I've always
Lawyer, detective.
Yeah, I think that would
Well,
be.
you're both very curious, so I can totally see that. Yeah,
Yes.
and well spoken and beautiful. Really.
Thank you.
We're just going to stick around here.
Yeah, no, I'm like so enamored with both of you, and I can't thank you all enough. Thank you, everybody that tuned in tonight. Barbara Claypool-White, who is an author, is on here also, and we're going to be doing an interview with her on Sunday. She's wonderful. And then Claire and who else is on here? Dave said some silly things, but buy the book on the bottom. You can, when you buy from an independent bookstore, you get them on the bestseller list. So
that's what I was going to say. It's just as a writer, as writers, I know Hank can say this as well, but please buy from your local bookstore. It makes such a difference both to the writer and to the independent bookstores. They need our business more than ever at this time. And it's really critical. I know it's easy to click a button on Amazon, but give your business to local bookstores.
Well, you can do it. So thank you. I'm sorry, Hank. Go ahead.
You can click right on that green button.
That's right. It's right there. Click
yes.
it.
And we have signed copies and we'll mail them to you or drop them off. So I can't thank you, both beautiful ladies. And I really hope you write together someday.
I'm going to talk about this idea. I love this. So
I
figure it out.
Do you have a link or a website that we can go to see you on the news? Or just WHDH in Boston?
Oh, just WHDH.com. And that
you do some great investigative reporting, and you get to the bottom of people getting taken advantage of and other things like that. So it was wonderful to watch you and talk with you. And Rea. Oh, I did it once. I am embarrassed. I'm sorry.
Don't.
You have a podcast. And
I do. So it's called Writeway, WRITEWAY. It's a weekly podcast. We just actually moved to weekly. And again, just really distilling all the information that's not really talked about in the publishing industry. So we kind of run the gamut of absolutely everything. And then people can also go to writewayco.com just to find out about us, services, books, all the fun things.
Great.
That's a great tool to have. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a great evening. Enjoy the fall weather and apple picking, Hank. We'll get there. Apple cider donuts. Anyways.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. This will be on YouTube in a few days, and buy the book on the green button or from your local bookstore.